Good morning, everybody. Welcome
Good
back to the Self Love
morning.
Show. Yay! So, thank you for our viewers that tune in weekly. We're so grateful for you to be here with us again. And for if you're new, welcome. This is the Self Love Show. I'm your co host, Dawn Light, and this is my gorgeous co host right here, Trish Wright. And we have an amazing friend, longtime friend of mine, Caitlin Naramore, today with us. Yay! And
Yay.
Caitlin is here to share. I'm going to read a little snippet here. So it says, why women who make bank doing what they love create greater global impact and live longer, happier lives with Caitlin Naramore. So join Caitlin shares her inspirational force and talks with us about how and why women are the ones who likely to give back to the planet, how running your own online business can be elegant, easeful, and highly lucrative, and why it's so crucial healers and coaches step forward and own their gifts in these times. So Caitlin is a business coach and the founder and CEO of Modern Queen, a heart and soul business training academy for female healers, coaches, and global leaders ready to scale to six figures and become queens in their own lives. So find out more about Modern Queen. We're going to post later in the show all of Caitlin's beautiful links. But for now, let's dive into a juicy conversation. Thank you, Caitlin, for showing up today.
I know. I've been so looking forward to this. This is
Yes.
a minute into making you guys have like a lineup apparently with the show. So I've been excited for a while. Yeah. Thank you for having me.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
So
let's dive
let's go.
in. Yeah, tell us more about, really this whole inspiration of, women leaders coming forward through owning their own businesses, which I'm full supportive of.
Right. I mean, in case we haven't noticed, it seems to be, entrepreneurial 30 on the planet. And more people are essentially, it's a whole new paradigm, right? Like we haven't had the internet for very long, maybe 30 years, something like this. And people have discovered that you can, as I like to say, show up and shine online and create not only a living, but in some cases, seven figures. There's a lot of coaches out there who are just bawling, right? I personally am in the six-figure category, and I take a stand for women, especially who are healers and in the transformative segment and coaches, wellness practitioners in that vein. I mean, oh my God. I mean, I could really go on about it, but historically, we're not the ones who are balling. Let's just put it that way. Historically, women alone, right? Historically have made a lot less money and have been behind the scenes than our male counterparts. And then couple healers, that's been its own, historical journey, as we know, a lot of persecution, a lot of denial of our wisdom, so forth. I don't like to go into the victim story too much, but it's important to name that, to claim it, and for women like us to shine our light in the world and offer our healing gifts and our, awakened wisdom, our capacity for intuitive knowledge. A lot of the women I work with, with people's bodies and, literally changing, their cellular identity and going from trauma to health and well-being, right? So having financial solvency, I like to say, solidity, stability, safety, power for women, and particularly women with this capacity, because who here, if you are one of those women, watching, we give a lot, right? We are naturally inclined to give, which I'm going to get to that, why we're better suited to make a global impact. But what can happen is women can overgive, undercharge, undervalue, not own their worth, not really claim their sacred power in this world. And again, we haven't been taught any of this shiz.
It's true.
We have not been taught this. We were not taught, financial intelligence, as it exists in this world, nor were we taught, financial, self-worth necessarily. A lot of people actually come from quite the opposite. Yeah, Trish.
Right there. For those who are watching or listening, can you please tell me if we have audio? Because that would be very tragic if we didn't. So type it in the chat box if we're having audio. Can you hear us out there in the world?
Hello, my kitties. Can you hear my cat meowing? He has a thing or two to say about this too.
We had a comment that said that it's showing live, but we don't have audio.
Oh, okay.
Or video. I can see it running on my page.
Okay, we're good now.
Okay. Well, I hope I felt like that was a great introduction. I hope the people were able to hear that. Do I have to repeat that?
I'd love to take it a little bit into a place of the question I have is the importance of having global impact or positive impact. And I think that that's something that's a big conversation in the world. Like things are changing, right?
Mm-hmm.
And women are starting to find their power and their voice in a particularly patriarchal society that's now dissolving. Like a lot of things are dissolving. And so I'd love to shift a little to why it's important to have a positive global impact and what that does not only for self, but for other.
Yes. So, okay. One of the things that excites me, there's multiple layers to this, right? Because or this world we live in, the good old saying, like money makes the world go round, right? Mm-hmm. None of us as spiritual beings always particularly love that, which can be a bit of a disconnect, right? Because the truth is that is the society we're in. And when there is currency, we can circulate, right? And what excites me about these times and the shift that's happening is money generating through the right hands. And the right hands being the hands, we're talking about women, men too, but those who are actually interested in changing the direction that we're headed, right? Which, as we're seeing, it's destructive, it's non-sustainable, it ain't working, and it's not going to work. So we, as I think we all know, and I'm like getting chills, we're facing this massive crossroads, right? And so, this passion that burns inside of me is like, okay, like Martin Luther King, Gandhi, like Dalai Lama, Mother Teresa, like they had funding, right? They had the capacity to make a bigger difference because they had funding, they had that stability, they had the ability to have their voices spread further because they weren't living out of survival, right? And so same thing goes, women, and I'm going to wrap this all back around. I have a bunch of statistics. I don't remember them off the top of my head, but statistically, women are more likely to give back to social causes, to environmental causes. It is literally in our veins to nurture and to give life and to give back. And we're empathic by nature. And even one of the things I read is like men might give to charities, but it's usually for their own, and sorry, men, this is a generalization, right? But might be for status quo or for their own self-interest. Women genuinely want to change the world. We genuinely want to see, animals safe, children safe, other women safe. What's that?
Children safe.
Children safe, like hello, or mothers, right? And so it's just, and this is something that's just kind of, I think it's growing inside of a lot of us. And I know it's grown inside of me the more I've stepped into my mission and what I'm all about at this point. Mm-hmm. Have the wisdom of women, which is inherently connected. We're generally collaborative. We're going to be like, hey, are you okay? Hey, can I help you? Hey, like the self-love of your show, like self-love / love, like external love. It's something that is inherent in us and that we can offer back when we're more well-resourced, right? Because there's not a lot of influence we can have if we're just barely getting by.
Yes.
Yeah.
I just spoke to a woman recently who's a second generation. She's second generation in loans. I don't remember her exact title. And she reached out. She was like, I have a woman who wants to build schools and send girls to school in Africa. And I was like, oh, like, this is amazing. She's like, how can you help? And I was like, oh, I don't know. Maybe let's see what we can do. And it is really like, what I see is just that, is that women have this tendency, we're speaking for myself, is that I have this tendency to give so much without like just knowing that it has a positive impact.
Yes.
That I want the world to shift, and I'm choosing to be or show up or use my time in that way. And you're right. I mean, I'm not saying that men don't do that. Men obviously do that. And there's
absolutely
a lot
absolutely
of men who are putting their time and their energy and their money into places like that. It's
my partner. He's a superhero. He's one of those men. Mm-hmm.
Thanks.
There's a lot of amazing men out there that are willing and ready to like help the shift on the planet as well, you know, and I think they're supporting the women, right, more than ever now.
Absolutely. And it's not an either or, it's just the tides have to shift to find the balance.
Yeah.
And I think that's what we're seeing. It's like, okay, let's get equalized, because still to this day, you know, it's like women earn 80% on the dollar to men working the same job.
This is
right?
equity.
What's that?
It's called equity.
Right.
So what we're doing is that we're talking about allowing, for lack of a better term, but focusing on women upgrading.
Yes.
Because there's such a deep desire to care and to love, and in the way that we think, like the way that our brains work is such a it has this network of care of like, you know, I have little kids in my neighborhood and I know that they might not get enough food, so I'm going to cook for the whole family. You know, there's a global reach of women's just genetic necessity for caring.
Right. It's a genetics. We're hardwired.
We're hardwired.
It's true. And it's for better, for worse. Again, that can go to its extreme. And, you know, here we are also, you know, like I'm doing this because it's like we're coming out of thousands of years of suppression. Did you guys know it's only been in the last flipping like under 50 years? It was 76. What was it called? The Equitable Credit Loan Act, where like women only in the last 50 years have been able to take out mortgages, loans, credit cards without a male cosigner. Like we're talking about the last 50 years.
Wow.
That we're even able to have this conversation, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let alone to vote, to get our own birth control without a husband's consent. Like there's a lot of things that we have to talk about this, because it's not like it didn't happen, and it directly impact us in the way that it was impacting us, you know, years ago, but it does still have lingering effect. We're still sitting here getting paid 80 cents to every dollar.
80 cents to every dollar. Exactly. And so again, I'm not prone, I'm, you know, I feel so synergistic with Dawn. Like I'm just a love child, you know, I'm not one of those women who, not that there's not a place for righteous rage, but like, I'm not going to hang out in like the hateful place around any of it. You know, I'm not going to get all embittered. I'm not going to, and in fact, because some statistics like that, and it's okay if you do feel angry. Like sometimes that's part of the deal, to move through the energy. But it's like I'm here for the like the transformation. The like, okay, now that we know that, now that we live in different times, now that we have resources like the internet, for one, right? To really show up and shine, and hello, welcome to COVID. That's a whole other thing, you know. And a lot of the women I work with are going from being like massage therapists or Reiki therapists or yoga instructors with like actual studios to like actually having to pivot online, for better or for worse, right? But like it's sort of necessitated. But check it out, we have this opportunity, and I'm an opportunist, I think, at heart. And I'm just like, we could, you know, and that our message can be shared. Prior to the internet, like where could people really share their message in a broad spectrum way, and reach a following and reach thousands of people, reach millions of people, if you grow that big, right? So I love that all of things combined equal the shift.
Absolutely.
Yes.
What would you say to, let's say there's some of our viewers are women or men, and they're sitting here and they're like, I have a beautiful message, and I've been sharing out all of this content, all of this work, and I just want to keep sharing it.
Mm-hmm.
And they have the, what's the term? There's a term for when you're really good at something, but you have the
zone of genius.
No,
genius. Yes.
Well, that's it. But when you question yourself, you're like, oh, imposter syndrome.
Oh, imposter syndrome.
And they're like, I have this work, and
Mm-hmm.
maybe it's not good enough. Or what would you say to them? What would you say to these people? I mean, I'm sure that this is something you deal with all the time, right? That
I was going to say, join the program.
There's this thing that happens, is that when you know your work,
mm-hmm.
and it's not getting a lot of likes, or it's not getting a lot of engagement, but you know that the work is helping people.
Mm-hmm.
And for all of you who have your own businesses, whatever it is, like this is one of the things, and I'm just bringing you guys into the conversation.
Yeah.
So ask your questions to Caitlin if you want. These are just some of mine that I'm hearing. So what would you say to them?
Yeah, I mean, it's really it's a great question, because it's so relevant, right? And it's absolutely, you're correct. So many of my clients come to me with that, imposter syndrome / what's it called? Vanity metrics, when vanity metrics is likes and followers, vanity because, and I've had to really steer some of my clients out of that. They're like, oh, I put up this amazing post and I only got 2 likes. And I'm like, so I'm going to answer this because there's a few different layers, right? Like on the one hand, one understanding of it I have is premium buyers don't necessarily actually ever comment. They're not necessarily going to be the most engaged people. So it doesn't necessarily mean you're not going to get a client because you're not getting likes.
Paying attention.
What's that?
But they're paying attention.
They're paying attention and they are watching you. I can't tell you how many people have come across. I would have no idea if they were watching me because they never showed up. And then they're like, yeah, I've been watching you for a while, and I'm like, no, you're one of those ones,
Yeah.
So not everybody engages, even premium and not premium, not everybody engages. So that's one element. Another one is like, it's all about consistency. So, and I mean, there's like algorithms and there's times a day. I mean, there's engagement, there's all these ways to kind of play the game to get more seen. But it can also be like, an algorithmic thing. So don't take it personally, just keep going and keep spreading that message. And it's going to, because I can speak this 1,000% from experience, I'm building, right? Like my reputation, my momentum it's gaining because guess what?
You're consistent.
I'm consistent.
Mm-hmm.
Every day, every week, I'm here. I'm here. And guess what? I'm here. And it keeps saying my message.
I'm here.
Yeah. And then it builds trust, right? And it builds like interest. And then you start getting results and it's a momentum thing. So especially as an early stage entrepreneur, which I work with a lot of early stage entrepreneurs, it can be frustrating because you're like, nothing's happening. And I'm just like, ladies, like keep it going, which weaves back to the imposter syndrome, especially if you're early stage. It can really feel like sometimes you're like, I'm just kind of pulling this out of thin air. I don't totally know if this is even going to work. Maybe I suck. Maybe I'm not going to get results for the clients, like these big concerns, which are totally natural. But there's only one way you're going to get there is by showing up and doing the things. Doing it, which in and of itself ends up solving imposter syndrome. Mm-hmm. Because you start to get results and because you start to actually have clients and because you start to actually have clients who are having amazing results themselves and they're singing from the rooftop all about you. And so it's an interesting loop, right? It's self-correcting almost if you take the right steps and do it right. Now, then there's imposter syndrome that can come from just the lack of kind of self-worth and not feeling completely confident or convicted in what you're offering. And that's its own like mindset / even like trauma healing,
Yes.
I've definitely worked with so many women who, I call it like the witch wound,
Mm-hmm.
where it's like the persecutions and other lifetimes for stepping into our power. And like, they actually have to work through that.
Yes.
To step into this lifetime's expression powerfully. And that can be a real, that's even beyond imposter, but it can show up as imposter. Like, who am I? Right. And I'm, and me, I'm like, who aren't you? Like, look at you. You're fucking gorgeous. You're wise. You're an incredible writer. You have healing gifts like galore. Like,
right.
Who aren't you?
Right.
Right.
I find that it really shows up in like owning the voice. Like in the clients I've worked with it, they've literally not been able to like actually speak or show up in a speaking format.
Yeah.
Because there's true trauma blocks. And I can actually speak from that place. That was my reality and my experience for a long time. Like before I birthed the self-love show, I had to do a lot of deep inner work to even, but I'm a great speaker. That's the thing. That's the irony of it is I had to work through those blocks to step into being able to speak powerfully, and now I'm fine with it. Like I could just get on here and riff and share and like it's authentic and it's just always from that place. But it took some time to peel back those layers because, it just trauma. It was all related to my own trauma and intergenerational trauma and past lifetime trauma as well.
Yeah, exactly. Well said. And again, women, right? Like, the men have been out there for centuries, like calling the shots and being at the forefront and running countries and planning wars and, being these business moguls and everything like that. And women are like cooking and having babies. Not that I have any problem with that. That is like everything, honestly. But as far as like stepping into seats of power, and especially through the expression. And I just want to say too, because the expression of a lot of the women that I work with, it is an alternative way to the way of the world, right? So to speak the truths and truth. And look at, we can see there is a lot of like slamming going down on the internet and a lot of people's truths being really, attacked and disregarded. So there's that, it's kind of like, oh, wow, the thing we've been afraid of from the past life, we have to kind of overcome in this life anyways, right? And I'm always like, girl, like the haters are going to be haters. Let them, and you keep it, you shine your light.
The reality about that is when someone is judging someone, it's their own self-judgment.
Yes.
Like, so really like you just look at that and go, wow, that's your own self-judgment. Bless you.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And then if, you're affected by their judgment, it's kind of like, well, what's getting triggered is always the self-inquiry, right? Right. Because it's all about the self-responsibility and self-inquiry. So yeah. And like so much a part of this is, women busting out and speaking and sharing. Some people are not going to resonate. That's okay. Right. The people who are, they're going to flock to you like a moth to the flame, right?
You just said something important, and you have said a lot of things that are important, but there's this one thing that it's kind of controversial.
Oh, good.
Yeah, I know, huh? I'm in a lot of Facebook groups, and I'm in some attachment groups and attachment theory groups, and I'm in some codependent groups. I'm just like, watching the part about self-responsibility. Mm-hmm. Wow. Mm-hmm. It like what I find I'm going to just speak personally is that what I find when I take responsibility for not only my thoughts, but the way that I impact others, the way that I'm showing in the world, like when I'm taking full responsibility for self and my impact on others, my life becomes more empowered. Even if it's hard, like even if it's like, oh gosh, there's a lot of stuff going on. Like even then I'm like, oh, it's stepping out of the victim role. It's
Amen.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of people want to stay there.
Oh, I know.
I know you know. Work with people who want to either like fight that
mm-hmm.
or actually want to dissolve that. And that's the thing is like I'd love to hear a little bit more about self-responsibility. And let me context it for in this group that I'm in, when we talk about self-responsibility, people often get really hyphy about it or get really upset and say, well, that's just bypassing and enabling other people for bad behavior.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, well, no, it's not exactly like that. It's about setting boundaries and about proximity, and it's about, you know, so I'd love to hear both of your thoughts on self-responsibility in impact, self-responsibility in owning your life, self-responsibility in being your badass selves. Like, what does that look like for you?
Yeah, it's so massive, right?
It is.
And how it relates to global impact, because, you know, and I'm not going to say I'm perfect, right? Like, there are so many things that are unconsciously being done in this world.
Yes.
And the more the eyes wide open, the more you go, shit, I better take responsibility for my part in how, you know, my choices, like my daily choices, right? So there's that, you know, element to it that's like, whoo, that's a whole can of worms. Like I don't even actually want to get into it, but like I've been having some eyes wide open moments lately that I'm like rethinking some of my choices, right? And really like going like, okay, we got to take it up. Okay, all right, we're taking it up a notch there too, you know, like
behind the scenes about those, because
I mean, for instance, I quit eating beef a couple years ago when I understood the cattle industry is so effed and it's causing deforestation in the Amazon and it's causing gas emissions and, you know, right. And then I'm since edging even closer to becoming a vegetarian because the meat factory farming is so wrong, you know, so you know, these things are, because like, whew, it's a whole thing. And that's what I mean. That's a whole other topic. Yes. I don't want to get into that, but there's so like that level of responsibility of like, what impact am I making with my daily decisions? And then there's personal, like emotional, mental responsibility. And I think what you said, you know, in regards to like the internet, and you just see it, people are just flinging at each other. They're just flinging. And it's such like, it's just wounded mirrors. Like having a spat, you know, like the bunnies I was telling you, they're just spatting at each other, you know, like kick, 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 you know, and it's like, there isn't really any resolution with that kind of behavior. And it is coming from the wounded victim state. And imagine a world where every single person began to take responsibility for their actions, for their reactions, for how they're treating others, for how they're treating the environment, for what choices they're making that is impacting the environment, for like, you know, it's vast, but
and just starting to have the conversation around where am I not taking responsibility in my life? Where am I being blind in my life that is really affecting things, you know, like maybe if you're having a job that you're flying all the time and that like, you know, and that extra oil expenditure in the airplane, right? And like that.
Which, did you know there's carbon credits that you can, the carbon credit system is a good one. Anyone wants to look into that, look into carbon credits, because you can offset the emissions from the plane ride by giving back to these different environmental causes. It's pretty cool. Right. And this is happening more and more, right? And that's a way to be self-responsible. I have started to do that because I travel a bit and I'm like, oh, right, I don't want to leave a big carbon imprint. So cool, I can offset. That's one way to
I love that.
Mm-hmm.
I love that.
Yeah.
It's also, you know, where can I make more self-honoring choices that are honoring myself, which is totally all about self-responsibility. You know, when you lean into making self-honoring choices, that's always for your highest and best good. And it will affect everyone else for the highest and best good too. Because when you're leaning in and listening to Spirit's directive inside, that always has the broader everyone involved.
Yes. Truth. It's that is so beautiful. What she said.
What I'm loving is that there's that the self-responsibility piece that we're talking about also has a responsibility to humanity or a global,
Mm-hmm.
and that's a specific little like thing that I was just hearing, maybe a month or so ago. I don't know when. Dawn, maybe you can help me with the time frame. Is that Scott and I ran a show called Straight Talk, but it was on the evolution of sovereignty. That what I had noticed is that the spiritual community had created this like I'm sovereign, and it was also really kind of abusive in that it was just I get what I want,
Right,
without considering any impact on anybody else. Like, oh, you got to deal with your own feelings about my actions, and it was kind of like, oh, okay. I mean, you don't need to go into a full codependent fawning situation, but there's balance between, just flagrantly running around and bumping into things and running all over, flying and just, having an impact. That there's a difference between doing that and taking responsibility for it.
mm-hmm.
For like, oh, I totally stepped on your toes there. And I want to acknowledge that because we're in a community now.
Yeah. Yes.
That are.
Yeah. And I think in this sort of coaching industry, you can see, there's a lot of sovereignty speak, and I do believe it is important because we're graduating out of unhealthy dependency. But I think what you're speaking, it can it's almost like America, like being almost too individuated, it's like, it's all about, right? And so where do we find the interdependence again, right? From a self-respecting, self-sovereign state, like each person, finding their inner sovereignty, which I would like to think, the more each of us are aligned with that state of being, we're naturally going to be more respectful with everything else, each other and the world, right? There's going to be an inherent respect that's going to, have a ripple effect because you're respecting like your own process. And the truth is, none of it is separate. Nothing is separate.
Nothing is separate. It's so true.
Separate.
I love that you brought that in. Thank you.
Yeah.
Just such it's such a compassionate and empathetic place to be living in humanity.
Yeah.
That self-honoring choices are not selfish. Self-honoring choices are for the good of you and for all.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then, as we know, that can turn into quite the debate, given things going on with the vaxes and all of that, right? Like, woo, and people are having some real fiery opinions, and it gets tricky, it gets real tricky in a time like this when there's a lot of unknowns. And, again, I just am like, if it's, how can we find equal grounds? How can we find a healthy conversation?
I think I want to bring forward too, this is how I create healthy conversation, is to always be willing to see through loving eyes.
Yes.
Always be willing to see the loving essence in another, because that really strips the veil and really reminds us that there is no separation. And always be willing to hear from the ear of your heart, the love.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And so that really bridges the gap when there's a disconnect, when someone's struggling where they feel so separate from another and their experience is so different from the other person's. Bridges the gap. Just be willing to do those two things with every person, no matter what walk of life, race, color, sex. If you're willing to do that, there's always going to be a middle ground found.
Always. And the good thing is every ounce of suffering, I think, is just people are afraid. It's just fear.
It is just fear. Yeah.
And it's a really vulnerable thing. We're vulnerable, to life. We are, it's just inherent. Like, there's no guarantees. And so to really you know, like all the fighting that you ever see is just coming from a deep insecurity and vulnerability. And like to be able to really listen, what did you say, through the ears of the heart, you know, and not get wrapped up in the, you know, suffering states, you know, and instead find those compassionate states. As I think what you're saying, the ear of the heart is the ear of compassion, the heart of compassion. And it's not easy, right? Like who here doesn't get triggered? Like, hello. And, you know, like my partner and I have been on like a wonderful journey of like finding compassion through our triggers, right?
Yes.
And we're doing really great. You know, we're kind of amazing actually, after, you know, some very deep-seated kind of masculine, feminine, ancestral traumas coming to the surface as it's meant to happen in a relationship. So,
Yes.
and that's another thing. It's like, okay, let's weave this back to like women healers. You know, what do women healers help people do is get into their parasympathetic nervous system state where we're going to be less reactionary and more calm. Help people step out. Like I literally have like one of my one-on-one clients. She is a divine feminine sovereignty coach, right? Like helping, you know, women self-respect, self-regulate, step into their voice, step into their divinity, all these things. And that, so again, back to where this work is so important, because we're having to, in a very edgy time, cultivate states of grace.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right. And that's precisely what the women I work with do. And why it's like so important.
Yes.
Because each of those women have a ripple, like they affect one life and that a life affects lives. And it's like, it becomes this really beautiful ripple effect where, you know, ideally, and I pray, you know, more of humanity, quote unquote, wakes up to love.
Yes. 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 Yes.
Yeah.
I just want to reach out to just say thank you to Heather and Jody Ann and Vasil and Diane and Scott for being here. And we're getting a lot of really sweet and amazing comments.
Oh, good.
So
yay. Hi, everybody. Thank
Yes.
you.
Thank you for watching. Yay.
Yeah.
I just love this conversation of the impact, you know, it's so powerful because every woman, you know, this is my perspective too. When I coach women, I'm really doing it from this just, you know, accessing the higher self, because when we're fully tapped in to that conversation inside with spirit, it makes mountains move in people's lives.
Yes, it does.
And like major things can get solved when people are tapped in and tuned in to their full potential, their full power. They're not playing a victim role in any way, in any area of their life. And that's the whole reason you reach out and get support through any coach. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Because it's so you can peel back those layers of where you've, you know, had a victim story or a role of whatever has taken place in your life, whatever the conditioning, trauma, spiritual curriculum, I like to use that word.
Yep.
You know?
I like that.
And it's really to like help each person get fully dialed with their particular soul purpose.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that's it, right? Like once we're tapped into our soul purpose and speaking from that place, owning it, shining it, living it, embodying it, it makes ripples in everyone's life. No matter who it is, the grocery teller at the store, to the, you know, the major CEO of a major corporation, all of it, it matters. Every conversation you have matters.
Praise be. Praise be. And, you know, again, I'm going to keep weaving it back to the wealth and the sovereignty through wealth. You know, and like at the nervous system effect, we can do a lot better when we're healthy ourselves, right? And we can do, I know my own experience in this life, you know, coming from some scarcity, you know, there has been some scarcity in my history, and really committing to like, hell nah, like I'm very committed to living as having security, because I know when I have that, I can serve more.
Yes.
And, you know, my nervous system is calm. Like, think about how your nervous system feels when you have like $2 in the bank versus 20,000, 200,000, 2 million. Your nervous system is going to be a lot more like relaxed. It's simple math. It's like simple math. It's really, really basic. And so, you know, any of the disconnect between money, you know, being the root of all evil and all these kind of narratives around it, it's like, well, yes, because money has gotten into some dark force hands, we could call it, you know, and it, you know, there's a narrative that has its evidence, no doubt, that is true, and there's a lot of greed. And what I want to really unpack here is that this isn't about greed. It's actually really the opposite. It's really, really, really the opposite. It's about being, you know, with more wealth, back to longer, happier lives. Wealthier people are statistically live longer, right? Less stress, more capacity, right? Your nervous system is calmer. You're able to make that much bigger an impact. And that, again, money, I'm just like, oh my God, you know, finances running through the right channels and the progressive channels, like, you know, all that money that goes to war, all that money that goes to oil, imagine that it goes towards progressive environmental technologies, planting trees, right? Cleaning up the oceans, ending human trafficking.
Yep.
Taking care of the animals, like all that. That's like I have such a thing for animals. I swear to God, if you want to like get my heart gooping, I donate a lot to animal charities around the world. That's like a big thing.
I love that. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
What would you say is, you know, for those coaches out there that are, you know, healers, however, women that are really seeking, you know, to expand and grow to the next level of their capacity financially to serve at a greater level, right? And then to give back at a greater level, because that's what this conversation is about. How would you say, like, what are the main, you know, what's the tipping point thing you really help women with to get them from that, you know, scarcity mindset where it's like, oh shit, I'm barely, you know, there, to like, I'm really thriving in this way. Like, what are your, you know, juicy tidbits there?
Yeah, great. I mean, that's great, because that's like precisely what happens, you know, in the modern queen terrain, you know, is really helping women to adjust their sails, so to speak, from we'll call it scarcity mindset, we'll call it not charge, you know, undercharging, whatever, you know, there's like a variety of ways we could describe that, but just shifting into not only the mindset, because there's like mindset, but it's like, we all know it's beyond mind, it's energy.
Yes.
So the energetics and the mindset is kind of like the preparation. So it's like preparing. Okay, if you're a 7-figure queen, who is she being now? Who is she showing up as now? And what does she need to clean up? What storylines? What static in her body, right? And so I'll recommend my clients get therapy and get healers themselves, right? Because you gotta like, it's gotta be all the way through, right? It's not just like we're just like these like super sheroes who like don't get support. Opposite, like the more you step up, like you know, the more support that you need to also clear, because it's often, you know, body deep, as we know, you know, as healers ourselves. So it's clearing those traumas that come with the narratives, often inherited narratives, and just cleaning it up, combined with tools, combined with how-to, combined with strategy, combined with, okay. And again, this is like the industry I do is online coaching and how to show up and shine online. And like, there are steps and there are ways you can do it organically, intelligently, elegantly, relatively easefully. I mean, sure, you gotta like, I'm not going to be like clients are just going to fall out of the sky out of nothing. Guess what? You got to create, you know, the space for them to fall into, you know, which is your content, which is your powerful messaging, you know, which is your signature method, which is like all these pieces that we put together. So to answer your question, it's like in my world, there's like a sequencing.
Yes.
That I bring each woman through, that all clicks. And then it's like, okay, and go time, basically.
Can I ask a personal question?
Oh, yeah.
All of you who are watching, this is super, super personal. So I grew up in a trailer park in Montana. I grew up pretty poor and have lived in some pretty poor communities most of my life. And I've spent all of my money, like mostly finding tools, becoming a massage therapist, becoming a hypnotist, going to classes and workshops and these things. And I like all of my money has gone into
Good.
like those things.
Training.
What I find myself in, oh, I'm shy now. I'm all like,
Good.
You're gonna know
it's part of what gets released.
I know. What I find myself feeling and thinking about is that there's people who want to pay me, and those people do. And I'm so invested in making this information accessible that to people who don't have the money.
Mm-hmm.
Like how fucking hard I struggled and clawed to even get to the places that I've been able to take. Like what a privilege I've had to be able to make the money that I have.
Yeah.
In the ways that I have, to get to the, like, to take the classes and the workshops, or to be gifted into something. And so when I'm thinking about all these, like, the tools that I teach are so fundamental to human relationship and adulting and humaning just with people and self, yes, that I'm like, I just want to give it up. I feel like it's so important for children to know this. Children don't have any money. It's so important for my friends and for everyone to have these tools accessible to them if they want it, that I just have a tendency just to give my time and my energy away.
Yeah.
It's not out of devaluing it. I know how valuable it is.
Yes.
It's deeply valuable. I just want it to be so accessible that people who want it and are ready for the shift to be like, okay, I'm ready. So how does one reconcile that? Like, of course I want to have financial security and to be safe and to like lean back into, you know, my own, like buy my mom a house and these things. And there's like, oh my gosh, I live in a really poor community now, and I want to give these tools of understanding better, healthier relationships, how not to be codependent, like all these things. Like I just want to give it to them. If they're ready, if they're like, yes, I'm ready, I'm like, oh, here.
Yeah. Wow. I mean, there's multiple things that come into mind. You know, at a business level, that's like it's a business model decision.
Yes.
Right. I tend to coach my women more or less. I mean, a lot of the women I work with are just getting started. So I don't go like charge $10,000 now, because they're still building their confidence, their competence, their testimonials, like all those things, right? But I do believe in solidifying your base. So as a business model, having, you know, more solid, like whether in like very simple, like you're going to have, you know, one-on-one and maybe one group program, like no more than that, right? Solidify your base, make sure you are stable, right? In your foundation, which again is why I'm all about like, hey, let's call it 100K year. Let's get that 6-figure, because that's your solid foundation.
Yes.
Then you can start diversifying.
Yes.
Then you can create free or $17 offers, right? Where you give from that place, right? So it's a business model perspective in that way. And what you're speaking, I think, is so common. We just want to give. Just make sure that you can give from your overflow, not from your what's the word I'm looking for? You know, your deficit of any kind, right? So it's like finding that right balance. Here's another thing I want to say. And this is something one of my coaches along the way, like it like changed, you know, my thing is she's like, do you understand that, like, because I'd be like, yeah, a lot of the women come to me and just, you know, they're kind of broke and they're like, can't afford it. And something to the effect, she's just like, yeah, but don't assume that. Like the fact that Trish, like you got resourceful coming from not much money because you knew you had something inside of you that wanted to shift and wanted to give. So know that there are other women and, you know, whatever level that are just like you, who they will get resourceful if it means that it's going to change their life and it means that it's going to put them on their path to their own financial well-being, sovereignty, taking care of their families and giving back, right?
Yes.
So, you know, in a way, she was just kind of like, it's like, don't disempower these women coming to you by assuming. Don't just assume it. Once they tell you, sure, then, you know, guide them towards your group or your free offers or something like that, you know, this kind of thing. But up until that point, people may have income. There may be resources. They might have family members. They might have, you know, like people get, I know I have gotten resourceful, like
Me too.
Crazy resourceful starting years ago when I first was doing my first investments. And I remember the first investment I ever did was $128 a month. And I was like, how am I going to do that? Like, that's where I was at that time. Now I won't even tell. I mean, I pay crazy amounts per month for my coaching, right? Like, but at the time, but guess what? I knew I needed to do that thing. And I was like, I'm doing it. And guess what? The money always showed up.
Yes.
That, you know, that's that spirit piece. So there's kind of like these like layers to it. And just all of that said, if you're in a position right now to be able to create like a mini course or something that like either is free or $17, then go for it. And that will satisfy. Or you have like a free group, right? Or that you do like free trainings in. Like there's ways, and I've worked with this with a lot of my women too. It's kind of like, how do I work with the women who are at that phase versus the women who are kind of at this phase, who are ideal because they're able, you know, I'm able to like work at a higher level with them and obviously make a better income and be more sustainable with that woman, but without leaving, because I'm all about, and I've even like had massive like spiritual downloads, like nobody is getting left behind.
No one's
getting left behind. So I think it's beautiful. And I think it's important to like have that, you know, full spectrum again, just so long as you're giving that from a place of overflow, from a solid place.
That's what Heather was saying. Heather was just like, give them overflow.
Oh, I just saw, that was the first time a comment just popped up. I can see it on my end anyway.
Oh yeah, we should talk about this platform because it's all I can.
Yeah.
Here, we got another one.
Oh, here we go. Caitlin, 3 enlightened, beautiful women. Hi, Diane. Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah.
So did that make sense? Did that answer your question? Yeah.
And totally, like, you know, things that I know and I hear, I have a tendency just to give. And that comes from the motherly, caring, feminine aspect of self. It's just that I love to, I've joked for a long time that like people will be like, well, what do you want to be when you grow up? Well, what do you want to be? I'm like, oh, a philanthropist. Yeah. I just want to do that for the rest of my life. That's it. That's all I want to do. But that takes wealth.
Yes,
it does.
Yes.
It takes.
That's why I mentioned Gandhi and Martin Luther King and like the major players. They didn't do it because like they didn't do it with no support or income. In this case, some women are like, I need an investor. I don't teach that. Like, cool if that works out. Like, I'm more like, be self-made. You know, like because we're equal opportunity. Not if you're watching this, like no one is more. How do I want to say this? Like we are equal in the opportunity to be able to create what you want to see in the world. Like your race, your age, your sex, like none of that matters. What matters is like your motivation and your like true north to what you know you're here to do. And like, holy shit, if like, back to like sovereignty and back to like changing the planet, if more people felt empowered to do the vision that they see and do whatever it takes. And again, like I feel like we're at grassroots level, and the more people who step into their personal power and their own personal queendom, so to speak, kingdom, right? Ripple effect.
Yes.
It is through small businesses that the world is going to shift. I like really believe that. And women-owned businesses, because hey, that's what I'm all about. Men too, but all of the above. Yeah.
Like to say the giving from the place of overflow.
Mm-hmm.
That is self-sourcing, and that's self-honoring. Giving, and it's also dissolving codependency.
Yes.
It's really like taking responsibility for self to nurture, care for the being that you drop into first, then prioritizing from overflow. I know that parents have a tendency not to be able to like really pivot to direct and full self-responsibility, but resourcing in this like as well as singles can do, or people who are have better jobs, I suppose, or more finances coming in. I just want to name that because I think it's important. But yes, the place of overflow helps with not creating resentment as well. When you
resentment will block you right in your tracks. Resentment's gonna not help the cause. And if you're feeling resentful, go ahead.
I said it's the giant boulder in the way.
It's the giant boulder in the way. Resentment, jealousy, comparison, all those things. Those are boulders. Comparisonitis. Everybody knows that one. And I always am just like, okay, if I catch myself in that drift, like, okay, what's inspiring me about that person?
Exactly.
How can I? Oh no, that's an inspiration. Okay, what's she doing? What am I? What can I upgrade? What can I shift? How can I? Rather than going into like, oh no, like we get so down on ourselves. And
negative self-talk is something to really like. That's where we've got to weed our garden. We learn to weed the garden.
Yeah,
it's not serving the highest good at all.
No, and it is getting caught in a victim mentality. It is, and that's not to shame anybody because it's part. I mean,
we're all human.
We all go through negative self-talk, and I can say for one thing, when I do big bold shit, there will be like a second guess little imp who pops in. There tends to, even to this day, there's always the new level, the new devil, they say.
Yeah.
So it's not to say anybody's like all without it at whatever stage you're at in your development. In fact, the more you go along, like the new level, the new devil, that little like whatever face that it takes. But the difference between someone who, I mean, I'll just use the word, is successful or whatever, and the difference between someone who gets stopped in their tracks is because they let that voice rule.
Yes.
Versus, being like, okay, I hear you. And I always think that's kind of like part of your inner child wounding.
Yes.
And so there's a really sweet, tender place for that. Like, I hear you. I get you're trying to keep me safe. This is kind of something you developed that you needed for survival. And I'm always like, okay, that's awesome. You can be in the passenger seat. I'm going to drive, right? That's the difference. Like, who's driving? And like, we'll go get, and like, trust me, you're going to be happier because I'm going to be able to get you like healthy ice cream, and I'm going to be able to like, like you're actually going to be happier. I know this choice feels frightening to you right now, and that's okay, but it's going to be, really, like, you can treat it like, your child, your inner child, who you're like, no, actually, this is going to be really good for everybody. Come on, just, right. So all these tricks, all these ways. But it's not to say that like there aren't like innate human, like stuff that comes up along the way. You just get better tools and better ways to navigate it.
Yes.
So it doesn't rule the roost.
Oh, I can speak from true experience. Like, committing to going to graduate school was like a huge step. Yeah. And it was like a lot of money. Yeah. And, I've invested well over hundreds of thousands of dollars into my growth alone, in my coaching business, in my everything. And so, but it was really effing scary. Like, it was really scary. And of course, what did it do? It immediately surfaced all the things that I had to look at. And it was a huge commitment to self. And really, I found that the 2 years I was in graduate school, it it was like a powerful vortex that I was in, and everything that could have gone wrong did.
Yes.
I like my first weekend, I flew to LA to go to graduate school. I came home to my neighborhood being on fire. I was flying home not knowing if I was going to have a house to land in.
Whoa.
Literally. It was like, all right, shit's getting real. Like, all right, are you going to be committed to this path?
Right.
Regardless of what's going on in your circumstances, are you going to stay true north?
Really so good that you speak that too, because hello world. And I know a lot of people can feel like, well, what's the fucking point anyways? It's all going to shit, you know, like, right? Like whether it's personal or like global. And it's like, yeah, no, are you committed to the change regardless of what's going on around?
And it was just a really powerful opportunity, like it to really strip the ego's identification in every way of like all the unresolved material in my consciousness from childhood wounding, childhood trauma, child abuse surviving story, all of that. It was like an opportunity to unearth it all. And really give it like the love and the presence and the understanding so that I could tie it all in a neat little bow and complete it and lay it down and not live through that lens of perception any longer. So I could elevate my consciousness to step forward in a serving capacity.
What she said.
Right? Like, I'm just speaking from that place because that's the journey. That's the journey for what we're speaking about for women, right? And it looked that way for me, and it could look different for you, but I know, because I've served women in this capacity too, that it's all a journey of deeper self-love and like calling in and really coming home to self and letting those patterns and conditioning fall away. And in so doing, your life levels up in every area.
Yes.
Financially, emotionally, spiritually.
You make space. You're making space, because what was static and what was holding, you know, these holding patterns, when you're able to dissolve them in all the ways that you're speaking, then there's room for more of what you want. Right? Yeah. And when we stay stuck in the victim patterns, and we stay stuck in the blame, and we stay stuck in the like everything's wrong, right? Because what if we're like, okay, woo, things are intense, but what if we didn't make it wrong? What if we were just like, right? We're like, okay, this is what's going on in the world. You know,
it's happening for me.
It's happening for me. And how can I show up in, you know, in my highest capacity for this incredible time we live in? Yeah. And it's a process, and it's a journey. No two ways around that.
It is. It's a journey to awakening, truly. Like when you step into being an entrepreneur, it is truly a journey of awakening. Like it calls you out on every area, like every area. And I just invite you forward into it, because it is a delicious journey.
Right. Delicious and like, it's like the hero's journey, the heroine's journey, right? Very much so.
I just really thank you so much for the work you do in the world, Caitlin. I can see what an impact you make in women's lives. And it just touches my soul to know that you're doing this work. And thank you.
You're welcome. My pleasure. My honor. My pleasure.
It's really incredible to watch you over the years, and like how you're shining and your consistency and just everything. It's really incredible. I just really want to deeply acknowledge what you're doing and the impact you're making, because I can see the ripple effect that, you know, and it's so exciting because we don't know yet how these women's lives are going to impact the world, right? And be those change makers in the places where we're at that fork in the road in our consciousness on the planet. And like, it is happening under the scenes and behind the scenes. And it may look like everything is all bubbling to the surface right now for healing purposes. But I know that you're planting those deep seeds of like that spark of fire in the soul and those women's consciousness, so that they go out and be the change makers in the world, right? We each have a powerful role to play.
That's right. No shame.
Yep.
No shame.
To find more about Caitlin and the Modern Queen Beauty Business Academy. Sorry.
It used to be. It was actually Business and Beauty Sprint was my very first Modern Queen offer. It was a 3-month. Yeah, yeah.
Let me say
It was
that
when I
again.
was still kind of sorting out, the layers of what I was actually offering, and so yeah, I was like beauty because like who, let's be beautiful too.
Again, so to find more about Caitlin Naramore and her amazing program, the Modern Queen Business Academy, I added it to the chat.
Thank you.
You can also go to CaitlinNaramore.com/academy/ find her work there.
Yeah. So myself, I'm a creature and a half. One of those, like, how do we begin to define? I have a history of actually being a chef and a chocolate maker. But I would,
by the way,
really amazing chocolates. They were one woman. She's like, yeah, basically it's like magic disguised as chocolate. I've always, like, even because I had a vegan catering company in San Francisco years ago, and we were Love More Gourmet, and we were always about giving back, and we were always about the bigger picture, the environment. We chose vegan because we didn't want to give back to the animal industry, all of these things, right? So I've been a conscious entrepreneur since my 20 years now, basically. I have never been a 9-to-5er, when I was like 20, I worked in like a high-end clothing boutique. It was like the one time I ever did that. But anyways, all my life, I've just been a champion for awakening, if I were to just break it down at that level. I was living in New York and I was studying a really powerful healing modality, universal health principles. And during that time, it was like, speaking of seed, there was a seed that was like in there, a little fire flower, right? Like a little power seed. And it was my leadership seed. It was my coaching seed. It was my modern queen seed. Now, in retrospect, I can see that, where I knew I was here to come out from behind the stoves. And, I knew I had something bigger. I just knew, like, it was always inside of me. I always sort of had like a natural charisma and a natural like magnetism. And it was like, God, you didn't give this to me just so I could, like, I don't know, experience it. Like, it wasn't like, I knew there was a reason for all of it. Like, and that I had a voice, powerful voice, and a spirit, like, ancient spirit, like, who's been through some stuff, and just all these layers, and I did a lot of my own healing work. I'm also studied in Reiki. I'm studied in flower essences. I'm studying in chakra balancing. Like, I've studied as a healer alongside my chefing and been a part of amazing communities, extraordinary, like, talk about cutting edge, scientific communities, and just really like future-based technologies. It's been a fun path. Nary a dull moment, right? So as I came along my path, I was like, I've got to, like, do this. Now, guess what? I was like, how do I do this? I need a coach.
Yep.
I need a coach. So this was, however many years ago. I had already run my first year-long program, helping heal women and activate them into their purpose. It was called Butterfly. It was amazing. I was living in Brooklyn at the time. So that was kind of like the beginning of my leadership path and my online forum, essentially, right? And then Modern Queen came to me like I don't even know, like a gift, like, and here's your brand, And then I just hit the ground running. I've filled every one of my programs, hit 6 figures in my, like, not even 2 years. Now I'm 2 years in, 2 years deep at 6 figures. I have a consistent roster of one-on-one power client. Like, my clients are mind-blowing women. If you guys are watching, I love you. The most extraordinary souls. And then I run the academy. The next one's coming up in October. It starts in October. This one's going to be a 4-month platform where we cover the foundational tools of really operating a smart from the start online business. That includes your magnetic message and your, bringing your voice forward. It includes starting your Facebook group. It includes your brand and really up leveling it and how you show up in the world as a queen boss, right? It includes identifying your ideal client. It includes a 5 to 6 figure launch strategy. That's a new one that's super powerful. And then I'm so excited because I have beautiful Laura Lorios. She is amazing, and we'll be doing subconscious reprogramming for wealth. She's a support coach for the program, and she'll be doing very specific nervous system rewriting for each of the women in the program. And that's the first time I'll be offering that as part of my deal. And so I have a feeling this one's going to be pretty accelerated and like kind of glass ceiling bye. Bye-bye. And yeah.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Woo.
Yeah. It'll be like 12 women in the program. They're intimate containers and a mastermind container, and that there is an interaction between each participant and accountability partners and the capacity for the women to really support each other. Versus my one-on-one that's just me and them, and we're like hitting it, strong with the one-on-one customized support. Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah. It's awesome. I'm so in love with everybody. I've served dozens and dozens of women now. Like close, probably we're hitting 100 or close. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And it's my joy and honor to see them hit their first 10K month, the first 20K month, right? And to keep building off of what we start together.
Right on.
Yeah.
I'm like so elated for you. It's such a good thing.
Thank you. I know. Yeah.
Yes.
Well, thank you so much for your time.
Yeah.
You're so welcome. Yes. Yeah. Beyond. I mean, it's just I'm so grateful that you asked me to come and join and get to share, again, because I know you have a beautiful audience. So the more people who get this message.
Yes.
Yes.
This is our service work. This is the
Dharma.
This is what we like. This is the free program that we offer. That
right there you go. You're doing it.
This is it.
Yeah.
Show up every week. You get new tools and new understandings. And there's a new teacher almost every week. Sometimes we teach still, and we'll probably get back into that sometime. And it's just. It's accessible. It's on YouTube. You can share this out, and you can share the other ones out, or find us there. And I also linked that into the chat, so you can share it out. Like if it works for you, and it might impact some of your friends or someone you don't even know. Like there's been amazing and profound sessions on this program. And it's such a near and dear piece to my heart and to Dawn's, and I know.
Yeah.
I really want to say thank you to Love Coach Academy for being the muse and the growth trigger, and Scott and all his love. This is why we started. So I really want to thank you. I also want to shout out to Sign Network, who is amazing and who's sharing us out to 33 pages right now. And
thank you, Sign Network and Scott.
From around the world, being seen from around the world.
Good. Spread it.
We invite our viewers also to like, share, and subscribe. If you're following us on YouTube, like, share, and subscribe. We just want to keep growing and keep getting this beautiful message of self-love and all the beautiful facets of it out into the world, because it all matters. We all have a voice, we all have a purpose, and there's lots of ways to approach healing. And so the Self-Love Show really supports that and what it looks like.
There's someone for everyone here.
Oh, I love that.
And I mean, if you're really if you want to help us, like if you're watching and you want to help Dawn and I, it really is. Engage with the post, even just a heart or a like. That helps other people see it due to the algorithm. So if this is how you can, give back to us, if you benefit, that would be amazing. We love that, and it's also tells us that you're watching and to keep going.
Yeah.
And so I would love to pass it to Dawn, because if you're really enjoying this and you enjoy Dawn and my work, we also have another free offering.
Oh, yes, 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 yes. So we have a really beautiful free Facebook group called Reclaim Your Trust, a group for women. And this is a gorgeous place where if you're feeling like you have been in imbalance in your relationship and you're ready to shift gears and create that stability, that thriving container, and really rework your relationship with trust with yourself, even if you're not in a relationship, you're welcome in. It's for women, and it's been birthed from my own womb life experience of, that long relationship. I've been married 18 years, and that's an incredible thing in itself, because marriages, people really don't stay married. So it's really from that deep place of like working through your conditioning and really reclaiming your trust so that you can level up your life, right? And especially your love life. So that's a deep place. We have amazing tools in there. The group is growing, and eventually we're going to launch a really great program soon. Still preparing on the back end, but it's coming. So stay tuned. And so excited to have you in. Like, please come on in. We love you. And thank you to all the women that are in the group so far. We're just so grateful for you, and it's expanding and growing daily.
Yeah. And if anybody needs help with running their online business,
yes.
Connect with Modern Queen. Yep, we'll hook you up. Yeah.
Well, thank you all for showing up, and I'll see you next Thursday at 10 a.m.
Yeah. Thank you again, Caitlin. Thank you.
You're so welcome. My pleasure.